You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. You know, I want to talk about the Panthers some more. I mean, that situation is real. The Panthers are suffering from, arguably, the worst Super Bowl hangover ever, which is what we call it when someone loses the Super Bowl and then starts the season slow. And there is such a thing as Super Bowl hangover. I do think that it exists in terms of typically your team makes it to the Super Bowl, and if you losing changes a lot in sports, and it causes you to change and shift things that had you won the Super Bowl, well, you know what your formula for winning is, right? So you don't change anything. But teams that lose in the Super Bowl, even teams that lose in the playoffs, tend to either have a little bit more success based on the adjustments that they make or less. And then, guys, you get to the Super Bowl because guys play well. You can't afford to keep them. The Panthers had that situation with Josh Norman where they were not able to keep Josh Norman financially. And I understand why, right? Like, Josh Norman is not lockdown cover corner. He's not Revis Island. You don't put Josh Norman on a guy and expect that guy to just vanish from the face of the earth. Josh Norman takes away a side of the field. So presumably, you just line your receiver up on the side of the field that Josh Norman is not on, and you're usually okay in those regards. However, the Panthers find themselves in a precarious position where they cannot cover any part of the field, and so having at least half the field to defend would be better than what they have now, which is just nothing. Okay, it's just absolutely nothing. Just a wasteland. And they are struggling from the worst Super Bowl hangover ever, and it's going to get worse before we can even think of imagining the words better. Also, I'd like to talk to you about the Titans because they might win the AFC South. I chose them to win the AFC South. I saw that their offense and the way that they play had not really progressed at all. I think Mike Mularkey is ruining Marcus Mariota. They could still win the AFC South. And there's a very simple reason for that. And we'll get into all of that as well as Tim Tebow and other news. This is Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Make sure to check us out on our social media. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can stream the show live from YouTube. Simply search Hot News Talk Radio. How about streaming us from Facebook? Nobody else on the radio is streaming from Facebook, so far as I know. And of course, as always, Noogaradio.com streams all of our programming 24/7, whether it's Sean Hannity, who comes on before me, the David Tulis Show, Binary with Russell Stroud, The Herd with Colin Cowherd, Coast to Coast at night. Look, we've got everything. And of course, more football on the weekends than you can shake a stick at. That, and of course, you can check us out mobily if you have to be on the go. You don't get to sit at your computer. You're driving around everywhere. Maybe you're down in Atlanta. You can't hear the station. Maybe you're up in Nashville. I know that some of you business owners travel everywhere because I have trouble finding you all. So if you're doing that, check us out on the TuneIn Radio app, which is completely free in whatever app store you use. Again, that's the TuneIn Radio app. Search Hot News Talk Radio in the app. Give us a favorite. Press play. And you'll have Hot News Talk Radio everywhere you go. That's Hot News Talk Radio and the TuneIn Radio app. Listen like you mean it. The Panthers, it's safe to say, are not just suffering a Super Bowl hangover. A Super Bowl hangover is when you come out slow and you're not winning games that you ought to win, but it looks like you might be able to turn this around and right the ship. This is not a hangover. The Panthers are just bad now. And Panthers fans who sprang up over the last year, y'all just need to come to grips with this. Your team is not having a hangover. They're just bad again. Boy, that was over quickly. Here's the problem with the Panthers, is that they weren't incredibly designed in the first place. I mean, their offense is very simplistic. Very simplistic. It's about what can you do to get Cam Newton in a position to win you football games. Right? Like you see the Patriots right now. The Patriots are 4-1. Right? They hung in there without Brady. But why could they hang in there without Brady? Because their team is very well designed. and they were able to hang in there with Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. All right, and I understand that Jacoby Brissett wasn't playing well, but they were able to win a game with him. And then Jimmy Garoppolo won him a couple of games. And I don't know what the ceiling on Jimmy Garoppolo is, but I can tell you right now, he ain't no Tom Brady. He's not Cam Newton. Jimmy Garoppolo was doing good. Not great, good. That was the ceiling of Jimmy Garoppolo this season. Good. He was either going to play good or he was going to play bad. I don't think anybody had any particular delusion that Jimmy Garoppolo was just going to come out here and just start balling. He was playing good. And that, when you have that on a well-designed team, means you don't have to have Tom Brady to win games. It does mean if you're the Panthers, though, your offense is very simple. You're not wonderfully designed. You need Cam Newton. Derek Anderson is not about to get this done for you. Derek Anderson is like older Blaine Gabbert. He can win. The situations have to be just so. And we'll get into Blaine Gabbert talk a little bit later. Well, really Colin Kaepernick talk, but Colin Kaepernick, so far as his existence continues to be relevant because Blaine Gabbert can't play football. But regardless, right? The Panthers run the ball a lot. So they use the threat of Cam Newton running. They use Jonathan Stewart, who they miss sorely this season. And between him and Cam, you've got to figure out which guy is running the ball. And while you're trying to figure that out, Cam is not the most accurate quarterback ever. In fact, his numbers are fairly bad. They're not even quite at 60% this season in terms of completion percentage. Cam Newton is a good enough passer and an accurate enough passer that if you focus on the run too much, and with those two guys, you do have to focus on the run too much, he's going to hit all of his receivers. He is. And he has matured and progressed as a quarterback. Cam Newton is not the best passer in the league, but he's a better passer than he used to be by a very large margin. So Cam Newton has progressed, but the threat there is still the legs. It's not necessarily the arm. It's still the legs. The arm is a threat because of the arm's strength, but the arm's not a threat because of the accuracy. It's not there. And Cam Newton and his legs and the power that he has throwing the football disguised a lot of things with Carolina's offense that make no sense whatsoever. None. They don't really run complex routes in Carolina. Not really. And Derek Anderson kind of proved that on Monday night when he threw that interception. Was looking for Greg Olsen before he knew what Greg Olsen was going to do. The play was 3-step drop, Greg Olsen. And it didn't matter if Greg Olsen was covered. It didn't matter if Greg Olsen was uncovered. It didn't matter if Greg Olsen wasn't even there. 3-step drop, Greg Olsen. This is a problem. This is a very big problem. Their offense is horrible. And that is to say nothing of that defense, which I really think I don't have to go into harping on again today, because I spent the entirety of Friday talking about their defense, and then Tuesday talking about their defense. Their defense is horrific. There are no players who cover well on that team, and it's making the entire system suffer. I really don't want to come down on their pass rushers. Really don't want to do it, because the back end is so porous and soft. Anybody could throw on that team. I don't feel like I would have too much trouble doing it, albeit I understand that I really would. I'm just saying it looks that way when you watch it on TV. They look like they could not cover me and 10 friends. That is not a situation that you want to see a professional football team in, especially a professional football team that just went to the Super Bowl, lost, and had ideations on going back there again. And you got a guy like Cam Newton who you can't help but think, he's getting pounded. Then why do you think he's getting pounded? Why? Well, firstly, no Jonathan Stewart, right? So the dual threat of running just becomes a singular threat of running, really. And everybody's just going to take that out on Cam. I know that you have the other angle of this, which is that the NFL is not really protecting Cam Newton because Cam Newton is big and it just doesn't look like he's taking all the damage that he's taking. But that's not something that the Panthers can control. That's something that the league can control. And that's just something that they have to look out. Call it no matter what. Call it if it's Tom. Call it if it's Rodgers. Call it if it's Cam. I don't care how big Cam is, right? A foul's a foul's a foul. If you are hitting Cam Newton in his head, okay, being bigger does not make concussions less pertinent. So again, that's not something the Panthers can control, but that is a factor that's playing in here. But the other reason why Cam Newton's getting beat up is that offensive line was bad, and Cam Newton and his mobility were covering up for that offensive line for a really long time. And I'm not sure that Derek Anderson and his certain lack of mobility aren't going to get beaten to death either. He doesn't have a quick release. He's not accurate with the football, and also he can't move. Yeah, the O-line can't cover up for all of that. There's nothing to hide it now. I mean, the Panthers are in flames. They are basically a dumpster fire one season removed from a Super Bowl. And I can't think of the last time anything like that happened. There have been some bad starts, but man, this is probably one of the worst I've ever seen. Coming off a Super Bowl. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose on Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. You know what? Like what Clemson went through at the beginning of this season, and it is college football, so it's different because you tend to play the lighter part of your schedule earlier on in a lot of instances. Clemson, after the national championship game, that looks more like what I thought a Super Bowl hangover would look like. Clemson, they struggled early, but they were able to turn it around. By the time they rolled up on Louisville, they were able to withstand the punches despite the mistakes and still come out on top of that game. That's what a hangover is. Like you eventually come back from a hangover. There's a difference between having a hangover. Now, I've never had a hangover because I do not drink, but I have seen what a hangover looks like on some people, and it ain't pretty. But you know what happens after a hangover? You come back. You do eventually come back from a hangover. This is not a hangover from the Panthers. They just died. That's different. They just had all the alcohol poisoning. Just died. I mean, that's it. I mean, that is the worst start I've ever seen from a team that just came from a Super Bowl. The Tennessee Titans are capable of winning the AFC South, and there should be a number of reasons that I could go through to list why it is that the Titans are capable of winning the AFC South, the progression of Marcus Mariota, the fact that still somehow Delaney Walker is a viable option on that team. The defense steps up, plays really well. I'm very impressed with them. There's a number of reasons why the Titans can win the AFC South, but really the number one reason why the Titans can win the AFC South has got absolutely nothing to do with the Tennessee Titans and has everything to do with the fact that it's the AFC South. The AFC South is terrible. It's interesting because the AFC South has got the young quarterback situation going on, right? They've got Luck, who I would still classify as young, though he's coming up on just being a guy that we've always known in the league. There's just a moment where you just stop saying, okay, this guy's young, and just going, you know what? We've seen Andrew Luck forever. And also that Baldwin situation happening on the top of Andrew Luck's head is really not helping this guy is young argument. But Andrew Luck still counts, at least for now, as a young quarterback. They've also got, you've got obviously Marcus Mariota. They've added Brock Osweiler, who is young. He's been in the league for a little bit, but sitting behind Peyton Manning. But he is, you would consider him a young quarterback. And of course, Blake Bortles. I mean, there's a young quarterback revival going on where teams have basically said, you know what, this is the guy that we're trying to roll with for the next 9 to 10 years. And that's about that. Right. And the only team that could really definitively say this is our guy is Indianapolis because of the success that Andrew Luck had early. You could argue that Houston could say that with Brock Osweiler, given the amount of money that they paid him. But listen, if Brock Osweiler plays some more booty games like the game he played this weekend against the Vikings, he ain't going to be the starter in Houston for long. That's just a fact. I don't care how much money they pay you. Teams bite the bullet on this stuff and see if they can't trade you for like a 6th rounder. You end up being Sam Bradford, successful somewhere else. Do it somewhere else, because the amount of money doesn't seem to matter as much. And it's not like Brock Osweiler got a super contract. He got more money than he deserved, but he didn't get like a gigantic super contract where your jaw just hits the floor looking at the amount of money that guys are making. But really, the number one reason why the Titans are capable of winning the AFC South is everybody else in the AFC South. Like the Texans have games where they look elite. You're just like, okay, this is why they brought Brock Osweiler over. He looks like a solid quarterback. That offense looks nigh unstoppable. When they got Hopkins down there doing his thing, and when they're able to run the ball very well, which they obviously weren't this weekend because the Vikings are just scary defensively, just horrifying. So you got Houston and no Watt, which our whole thing was with them. Houston's defense was supposed to be brilliant because how on earth were you supposed to be able to block J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney at the same time? And then J.J. Watt hurts his back. And I dare say that's the end of Houston's run right there. Unless we're going to see actually brilliant Brock Osweiler, which I don't think. I think he's still got a lot of growing and developing to do, which is why I think it was weird that he left Denver in the first place. If you're going to talk about growing and developing, having a defense that can bail you out anytime you want, that seems to be something that you would like to have. However, money's nice. So Brock Osweiler went to Houston. Jacksonville is the kind of team that I don't understand them at all. I feel like offensively they've got some things going for them. They've got Allen Hurns, who's playing well this season. Blake Bortles is always, every season he develops more and more as a quarterback, but also Blake Bortles already looks like he's 40. Blake Bortles looks older than Andrew Luck, and Andrew Luck looks old. It's weird. Marcus Mariota and Brock Osweiler look like children. Blake Bortles and Andrew Luck look like old people already. And they're both young. And then Blake Bortles, 40-year-old Blake Bortles is playing well. He's been playing well every season that he's been in the league and has been improving. He showed a lot of promise this rookie year. And this season, I mean, he looks like he's starting to come into form of the guy that Jacksonville thought that they were going to get. He has not been disappointing at all. Does he still have a lot to change in his decision-making? Of course he does. But what young quarterback really doesn't need to refine that? I mean, you can look at a guy like Andrew Luck, who we thought he should be playing in a Super Bowl by now, and the decision-making there is not always great. And that's simply because that's just a hard position to play, and he's got no weapons really to work with. And standing behind an offensive line like that, you feel like you're forced to make things happen to win. So Indianapolis is in a situation where their offensive line is bad. Houston's in a situation where we just don't know what they're going to give us from week to week because Osweiler is inconsistent, and they lost J.J. Watt. And Jacksonville, offensively, can put points on the board, really. They're coming into their own as an offense. As a defense, they've got some work to do. I think that they're fine in the middle. Like the middle of that defensive line and their linebackers, that's a nice situation if you're Jacksonville, right? Everything else, not so much. You can really pass the ball on Jacksonville. If you run it to the outside, you can run it basically down their throats. It's a bad situation for the defense of Jacksonville sometimes when I watch them play, especially against more elite teams. And I'm looking at the Titans and going, defensively, they're not perfect. They bend, but they don't break. And offensively, despite the fact that they're one of the slowest offenses in the league, they find a way to score points, and they possess the ball forever. which I imagine is at least the one upside to being the slowest offense in the National Football League, is if you are successful at what you are doing, you're playing defense by offense. The Titans keep the ball forever. It may not always result in points of any kind, but man, they don't ever give it back. They might win the AFC South because they play in the AFC South. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Next.
Hot News Talk 1240.
AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, with your chance to win $124 in cash and $124 in food every week with the Hot News Talk Radio 1, 2, 3 NASCAR contest.
Hot News Talk 1240.
All you have to do is guess who's going to be first, second, and third place in the upcoming NASCAR Sprint Cup race. If you guess it, you'll hear your name live Monday morning at 11:30. Then call AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio to win. Enter your guess right now at Rick Davis Golden Diamonds, 5301 Brainerd Road, Chattanooga. Diesel Off-Road Technology Saudi Daisy for your four-wheel drive and truck needs. Stuff and upholstery with premium rubber foam. Amigos Mexican Restaurant next to Staples and Hickson. Drink specials during the race. Cell Surgeon, the Broken Screen Doc. And Shooter's Supply, 4824 Hickson Pike in Hickson.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Enter your guesses now and listen to the race live to win $124 in cash and $124 in food from Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Hot News Talk 1240.
I love NASCAR. Cash, 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 and more cash. Rick Davis has the cash when you sell gold, silver, diamonds, rings, and jewelry. Sell Rick your precious metals today and lock in your price. Hey, Rick Davis will trade your cash for shiny, brilliant, and heavy gold. Gold cheaper now by $100 an ounce. Join the Rick Davis Silver Bonanza too. Prices so low, the Lone Ranger is bound to gallop in, Kimosabe.
Hey-ho, silver, away!
The markets are changing, so buy now. Cash, 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 and more cash for your silver and gold, gold, gold. Rick Davis, 5301 Brainerd Road. That's 5301 Brainerd Road. Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. Oh, and cash, cash, cash. You know where it is.
Hey-ho, silver, away!
You want more business. You want to increase your bottom line. You want to spend less on advertising, imaging your business, and general expenses. You need Trade Bank. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Trade Bank. Call now to get access to nearly 400 local businesses. Trade Bank. Call 877-2202. 877-2202. Trade Bank. You want to increase your cash flow, your competitive edge, attract new customers, and build a loyal customer base. You need Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call right now. 877-2202. When you join Trade Bank, you'll get the benefit of free advertising in our monthly magazine, tradebank.com, emails, and mailouts. Join Trade Bank now and receive your Trade Bank debit card with trade credits to spend any way you want with our wide variety of Trade Bank partners. For almost 30 years, Trade Bank has been your voice for small business, a member of the American Bankers Association, and in good standing with you. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call now for a free consultation, 877-2202. That's 877-2202. Trade Bank of Chattanooga.
Expect mostly clear skies to continue through your nighttime. Not as chilly. Overnight lows 50 to 53. For your Thursday, another mostly sunny, warm, dry day, highs of around 80. A few more clouds moving in later Friday with a shower or two possible late Friday night. Glass Farm Nursery, the largest pansy and fallow supplier around. Flats now only $14.99. A huge selection of first quality 8-inch mums only $4.99. Open daily, closed Sunday. Glass Farm Nursery, Highway 11, 4 miles south of Trenton. And I'm Storm Machine 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core. On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. Shots rang out at the Mapco gas station on Rossville Boulevard. Police responded and gave chase, zooming down the highway. Eventually, the car stopped. A silver Hyundai Elantra stopped on the side of the road. One driver jumped out, ran away. He was eventually tackled and arrested. He was found to be DeKendrick Trammell, who's 22, a validated member of the Bounty Hunter Blood Gang, and Jubal Grundy, who's not in any gang, who's 26, was also arrested. Multiple charges have been pressed, including a charge of altering of a permanent number because a Taurus 9mm handgun was found inside the car that had the serial number scraped off. The two men are now in custody. A 131-car train derailed 10 of its cars, careening off the tracks at the Bailey Avenue Viaduct. CSX is on scene clearing up the wreckage. The reason for the derailment is still under investigation. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Martin Truex Jr. is off the pace and he is headed to the pit lane. Elliott powers around the outside. Michael McDowell pops a right front tire. Here's Martin Truex to the bottom. Blaney blocks him off too. Meanwhile, Chase Elliott went 4 wide on the back straightaway. They're side by side for the lead.
Hear it live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Hot News Talk 1240.
The voice of NASCAR.
So what would you do if you went to work and there was a celebrity there suddenly working at your job with you? And you're just like, you know what? I'm going to milk this. And you get that celebrity to sign a bunch of stuff. And then you take that stuff to eBay, obviously, and just check out eBay to see what it is that stuff is valued at. Say that was a situation that you found yourself in. Well, that actually is a situation that happened to the teammates of one Timothy Tebow. Tim Tebow obviously being the celebrity here, if you're just not getting the analogy. Tim Tebow being promoted to Class A ball for the Mets organization, playing in the Fall League. And Tim Tebow and his teammate, Patrick Mazeika, were taken. Their photos were taken on Instagram with Mazeika and Tebow and batting practice. And, you know, if you are a baseball player, a minor league baseball player, you do realize, then maybe you would realize, but maybe other people outside of your profession do realize, you don't make a ton of money. You are very much considered a person struggling to survive, right? Like you don't make a ton of money. You make roughly, according to this article by Deadspin.com, minor league weekly income is roughly $400 a week. Right? Like $1,500 is thereabouts what you make a month. So your annual salary is roughly around $18,000. Right? So you're not making a ton of money, is my point. $18,000 to $20,000 is what you're making. You're making nothing. It's peanuts, basically. If you're saying that this is a life that you want to lead, you certainly can't support a family on that. If you make $400 a week, as some minor league baseball players do, some make less than that, okay? Then after rent, clubhouse dues, clubhouse attendance tips, groceries, and any dining out that you might do, because of course you play for a baseball team, you are not always home. So you can buy your groceries all you want to, but you're not always going to be able to eat at your house. You're losing roughly $212 a week. What I'm saying is minor league baseball players have a tendency to be very, very poor. And Tim Tebow has a tendency, just as his existence has developed, to be very, very rich. He's done very well for himself at ESPN. He's written a book. He's got a documentary about, I think he's got a couple of documentaries about him, actually. And, of course, that's not counting the NFL money that he had. Because the NFL, despite how much NFL players complain about how much money they get paid, still makes more money than minor league baseball players. Okay, and Tim Tebow got drafted in the first round. So he was making first rounder money. Right? Like Tim Tebow made his rookie season more money than what Dak Prescott is making. And arguably, Dak Prescott's probably going to win more games over the same span of time that Tim Tebow played in the league. And Tim Tebow played with a very, very great defense. And Dak Prescott's only playing with a good defense. Great offensive line, though. Point is, Tim Tebow's his financial situation is nice. So if Tim Tebow's teammates, who are not as rich as Tim Tebow, get something signed by Tim Tebow and turn around and sell it on eBay, that's quite frankly not the worst thing that ever happened. Just going to be completely honest with you. That is not the worst thing that has ever happened. When you think about it, minor league baseball players don't make anything. Now, the story did get clarified, right? Tim Tebow did sign the bat for his teammate, Patrick Mazeika. And Patrick Mazeika did post the bat on eBay. However, he wanted to see how much it sold for. He said he didn't plan on selling it. He just wanted to see what it would go for, which is why he posted it for $4,500 because he knew that nobody would actually buy it for $4,500. And of course, if someone did choose to buy it for $4,500, then you just take the $4,500 and keep walking on with your life, I imagine. But my thing is, which is worth more, the sentimental value of the bat or what? Tim Tebow, look, Tim Tebow should sign bats for all his teammates, like multiple bats. That's how Tim Tebow would show me he's a good person. He would sign multiple bats for his teammates because they're not making anything. They're chasing this major league dream and nobody knows who they are. Tim Tebow's going to show up. Everybody knows who Tim Tebow is. The stadium, the organization is going to make more money off of Tim Tebow. And Tim Tebow might get a little bit more recognition, get a few more eyeballs on him, and might get that bump up that you're not going to get because you don't have a name that people recognize instantly. You don't have that name. This story is the most preposterous story that I think I've ever read and covered. And by the way, we as much as we want to forget it, we did do Deflategate. But the fact that Tim Tebow is still a story. Tim Tebow was a story when I started college back in 2008. How is this still happening? That's what I want to know. How is this still happening? It won't go away. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. And I will talk to you, I guess, about my own personal Tim Tebow in a second, being Colin Kaepernick. A story that I can't help but cover that story. I am drawn to that story. Like moth to flame, kind of drawn to that story. It is the most interesting story. But let me talk to you about Tennessee and Alabama really fast, because I do have a bigger breakdown for that coming for you tomorrow. Tennessee and Alabama. I think that it's considered one of the biggest games of the season, right? You can listen to that game here on Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. Coming up this Saturday, we have the most football on in Chattanooga, and we've got Vols and Tide right here on this station for those of you who'd like to give that a listen. And you can also listen to it on NoogaRadio.com. This has a potential to be the biggest game of the season, but that really just depends on how the result is. Like, that's one of those games that's going to be big in retrospect. Because I don't know if there's going to be a bigger upset this season than if Tennessee beats Alabama. And to me, it's one of the few viable upsets this season. It's one of the few viable upsets. Because, like, there are other upsets that would be bigger, right? On Alabama's schedule is also UTC. If UTC somehow beat Alabama, first off, Chattanooga would lose its mind. But also, that would be the actual biggest upset of the season, would it not? But in terms of viable upsets, because I like the Mocs. They're not beating Bama. And I'm not even certain the Vols are beating Bama. In fact, I'm looking at Alabama's schedule, and I'm not sure anybody's beating Bama. Play football. But whether or not this is the biggest game of the season is entirely dependent on the result. And that result would be a game in which Tennessee and Alabama were close. That would be a big game. If Tennessee doesn't show up and gets smoked by Alabama, that would be a big game. And it doesn't even matter how Tennessee does it. If Tennessee comes out strong and then fades and Bama beats them and the game is close, or if Tennessee does their second half stuff, or if they're just consistent the entire game, really doesn't matter. The big thing here would be if the game were even close. Because Alabama is good enough to show up and absolutely bury Tennessee. They're that good. Doesn't take away from anything that Tennessee has this season. They've had a great season so far, and it will continue to be a great season. Like, if they lose to Alabama, they can still win the East. They can still win the SEC title game. And depending on how a few things shake out, they can still go to a national title or go to the college football playoff. And then I suppose the national title is also in the works there for you. It's all still open for them, even if they lose to Bama. But I'm telling you right now, I'm not sure that they can even beat Bama. Like, I would be satisfied. And I say this as a person who is a non-Vols fan. So I don't have anything on the line in terms of rooting interest. I just really don't like Alabama. Like, really don't like them. But I would be surprised. And I've picked Tennessee to win every single game so far this season, including the A&M game. Because I thought that they were better than A&M. Even with the injuries, I thought that they were better. But I don't think they're better than Alabama. And it's got nothing to do with Tennessee. It's got everything to do with Alabama and the fact that I don't think anybody's better than Alabama. The Crimson Tide are the best team in college football, and it's not close. Again. And I remember last year, people were making fun of Alabama and talking about, they're big and slow. Colin Cowherd on this very station. Alabama's big and slow, and don't they remind you of a Wisconsin? They look like a Big Ten team. Thought that was the stuff that was being said about Alabama. Alabama still goes out there, wins the national title, which no Big Ten team really got close to doing. So no, Alabama doesn't remind anybody of a Big Ten team. And this year, you could argue they are younger and faster at about every position than they were a year ago. They look more like the rest of college football than they ever have. They're just bigger, stronger, faster. It's crazy. For me, a good result in this game, if I'm Tennessee, good result is keep this thing close. And look, Tennessee played Alabama close last year. Different Alabama team. Same Tennessee team, more or less. Different Bama. Very, very different Bama. This team is better than that team. And I really don't feel any qualms about saying that. This team's better. And they're more athletic. They make plays downfield in the passing game. They don't just manage the game. They don't just manage the clock. They smash you to pieces. And they rolled up on an Arkansas team and trampled them. And that's a good football team. And I fail to find the words to describe how good this team is and how it is on earth that they could possibly have gotten better. And I know that this is not what you want to hear on Alabama week. And look, I'm going to break down the game tomorrow, okay? We're going to talk about exactly what it is that Tennessee can do to win, because it's not like they can't win. Anybody can beat everybody, right? The whole, any given, I guess, Saturday in this case type deal. I understand. And they've got a puncher's chance. I'm just saying, in terms of if you straight up right now ask me how I'm feeling about it, I'm going Bama. I mean, barring something truly ridiculous or Bama just comes out flat for the first time this entire season, which they haven't done. Tennessee's come out flat a number of times. And they've got every reason to be a little bit overconfident. Haven't done it. They have put people away. I mean, this doesn't get easier for Bama. They've got Texas A&M on the schedule after Tennessee, who they're better than. They've got LSU, who they're better than. They've got Mississippi State, who they're better than. They've got Chattanooga, who they're better than. And then they've got Auburn. And the Auburn thing is interesting to me only because I'm not sure in what direction Auburn and their offense are trending in. Auburn has shown that they have an offense, though. That thing has shown signs of life. I thought that they were dead, that they had nuked themselves from orbit. We couldn't see anything in there just looking through the fog. Nope, Auburn's offense, signs of life. They're still alive. And it's the Iron Bowl, so weird stuff just happens. Like, just in games like this, that's just how it goes down. Weird stuff just happens to folks. Anything can happen in the Iron Bowl. I honestly believe that. So I'm not going to write Alabama in as completely through the woods here, but this part of their schedule, which was supposed to be so tough, Arkansas, Tennessee, Texas A&M, LSU, Mississippi State, and then Auburn after UTC. Yeah, Alabama's better than all of them. Played a good Arkansas team, hung 49 on them. I got nothing else to say to you on that. Showed up, hung 49 on him. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate you. I've got a Colin Kaepernick take extension. It's the redux. It's the revised version of the take that I had on Friday, which is that Colin Kaepernick is really, really close to being the NFL's worst nightmare. He was very close before. Now he's one game away. That Colin Kaepernick should never have had this opportunity, except Chip Kelly chose to start Blaine Gabbert at quarterback. They never addressed the quarterback problem. Chip Kelly chooses to start Blaine Gabbert, who looked good coming down to the end of last season and even started this season looking like maybe he could be a competent quarterback, sort of possibly, except for the fact that he's Blaine Gabbert. So no. I mean, Chip Kelly has got to be one of the most arrogant coaches in sports. All coaches are arrogant, to be clear. There are not very many humble coaches. Chip Kelly honestly believes he can win with any quarterback. It's the system that does it. He thinks he can do it with Bradford. He thinks he can do it with Foles. He thinks he can do it with Gabbert. It didn't work. None of them worked. All of these things are not working. And it's hilarious in as much as Colin Kaepernick is the one guy who everyone universally agrees fits Chip Kelly's system the most. Chip Kelly won't use him. And now Chip Kelly's forced to use him because there's no way you can show up and go, hey, y'all, it's my system. The system is what gets this done. The system is what makes us win. And that's why we'll use Blaine Gabbert. And then start the season the way that they have, which is terribly, and not change from Blaine Gabbert. Because if you start an entire season with Blaine Gabbert and have it go the way that it's going to go if you do that, you will be fired by season's end. Right now, Chip Kelly is trying to avoid being fired again. He's trying to avoid being fired again. So Chip Kelly, in a move of ultimate desperation, has to go to Colin Kaepernick, which means, A, he must admit that he is wrong, which I know hurts him. I know it's hurting him. He's got to admit that he's wrong. And B, he's got to use Colin Kaepernick now that Colin Kaepernick has drawn all the media attention to himself. Just drawn all this attention to himself. And the interesting thing about Colin Kaepernick is this. The cameras were already paying attention to him. The NFL does not like it when players express themselves in any kind of way. And CBS News, we are a CBS affiliate, they did a great job. They showed these polls yesterday of how America feels about the protests during the national anthem. And while most Americans dislike the protests during the national anthem, 54%, so it's not a landslide most, but it is the majority, an overwhelming number of Black Americans are totally cool with the protests. So there is a racial divide here on this opinion, which is like the last thing the NFL wants. The NFL doesn't want to talk about matters of race. You want to be neutral. You want to be milquetoast. And here's Colin Kaepernick bringing something to your doorstep that you absolutely do not want. And the only thing stopping him from doing that was Blaine Gabbert, which really we should have realized was a tentative position in the first place. The only thing stopping Colin Kaepernick from being a starting quarterback and being able to bring the NFL's worst nightmare to its doorstep is Blaine Gabbert. Now Colin Kaepernick's about to start, which means the only thing stopping the NFL's true worst nightmare from happening is Colin Kaepernick himself. If Colin Kaepernick plays well, this is about to get a whole lot bigger. Because now Colin Kaepernick's going to take a knee to start the games. We already point the cameras at quarterbacks a lot. Colin Kaepernick is not a guy who's been a scrub. Sure, he hasn't played well lately, but he's not a scrub. He's been to a Super Bowl. He almost won it. Colin Kaepernick is legitimately a very well-known player. A well-known player for his football skills already. The NFL doesn't want any part of what is about to happen here. And if you don't think that game, 49ers game, is going to be filled with the most flags and ticky-tack stuff that you've ever seen because of the league's strong stance against self-expression of its players, you have not watched Roger Goodell's NFL for very long. I'm not saying that they're going to go out there and try and get the 49ers to lose. I'm not that conspiracy guy. But I do think that the league's going to go after anybody who's dancing, celebrating, self-expression of any kind. I mean, that's not conspiracy stuff. That's what the league does. NFL is possibly the most totalitarian team in the league, and there's a reason why people call the NFL sometimes the no fun league, because they've got to remind you who's in charge. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Remember, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch. But remember, I'll see you in 24 hours. Don't go away, though. Alex Jones is right around the corner.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down.